Me, it was the day I realized mine was already broken. My name is Elaine, and I raised my daughter Sophie on my own. I gave her everything I could love, warmth, and every ounce of strength I had. I never imagined the same child who once clung to my hand would one day look at me with disgust and tell me I wasn't welcome at her wedding. But that's exactly what happened. And what followed shocked everyone who thought they knew our story. For most of my life, it was just me and Sophie. Her father left when she was 6 months old, leaving behind nothing but debts and silence. I worked 2 jobs, one as a nurse's aide at a local clinic, the other cleaning offices late into the night. Every night, no matter how tired I was, I'd come home and watch her sleep, that little girl with curls on her forehead and a tiny hand gripping her blanket. She was my reason to keep going. I missed birthdays, sleep, and sometimes even meals, but I didn't care as long as she had what she needed. Sophie grew up strong, beautiful, and ambitious. She used to say, "Mum, when I make it big, I'll take care of you." Those words were my fuel, my entire world. When Sophie went off to college, I felt like a part of my heart had gone with her. She called every day in the beginning. "Mum, guess what? I aced my exam." Or, "Mum, you'd love my roommate." But soon, the calls came less often. Then once a week. Then sometimes not at all. She came home for Christmas, her first year, wearing designer clothes and carrying expensive bags. She looked radiant, so confident, but something about her felt different. When I hugged her, she stiffened. When I asked about her studies, she changed the subject. And when I asked how she was affording her new lifestyle, she just smiled and said, "You wouldn't understand, Mum. The world's changed." That night, I cried alone in my room, realizing my little girl was slowly becoming someone I didn't recognize. A few years later, she called unexpectedly. "Mum, I have news," she said. Her voice was distant, almost formal. "I'm getting married." My heart leaped with joy. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. When can I meet him?" She hesitated. "We'll see. He's very busy." But a few weeks later, she brought him home. His name was David, polished, confident, a man from money. He shook my hand firmly, but never looked me in the eyes. Throughout dinner, Sophie laughed at everything he said, her voice just a little too high, her smile a little too wide. I could tell she was trying to impress him. When I offered to help with wedding costs, she quickly interrupted, "Oh no, Mom. David's family is covering everything. It's going to be a high-profile event." Her tone stung. Like my contribution, like me, was an inconvenience. It felt like a door was closing between us, and I was being left on the other side. The wedding invitations went out, but mine never arrived. I called Sophie, my voice trembling. "Did you forget to send my invitation, honey?" There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Then she said the words that shattered my world. "Mom, we've decided it's better if you don't come." I couldn't breathe. "What? Why?" she sighed, a sound full of annoyance. David's family is very prominent. It's an important event for his career. We just don't think you'd fit in. Fit in. I was her mother. I raised her. Sophie, how can you say that? Her voice turned sharp. Look, Mum, you just don't get it. You with your old clothes and your cleaning job. It would be embarrassing. For me. For David, please just don't make this difficult. She hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling a pain deeper than any I'd ever known. She wasn't just uninviting me from her wedding, she was erasing me from her life. For days, I was a ghost. The pain was unbearable. My friends from the clinic tried to comfort me, telling me Sophie would come to her senses. But I knew this was different. This was a deliberate, cruel cut. I thought about all the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the worn-out shoes. Was this my reward? To be cast aside because I was no longer good enough for my own daughter's life. One evening, staring at an old photo of a smiling little Sophie on my shoulders, a different feeling started to replace the hurt, anger, a quiet, burning resolve. She thought I was an embarrassment. She thought my life's work meant nothing. Fine, if she didn't want me at her wedding, then maybe it was time to stop being the quiet, sacrificing mother she took for granted. I wasn't going to just disappear. I was going to show up. Not to cause a scene, but to give her one last thing, a gift she would never forget. The day of the wedding arrived, a beautiful sunny afternoon. I put on my best dresser, simple but elegant blue one I'd saved for a special occasion. I drove to the lavish country club, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't try to get inside. I just waited. As the guests began to leave, smiling and laughing, I saw them, Sophie, a vision in white, on the arm of her new husband, David. They were walking towards a sleek, black car, showered with rice and confetti. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, holding a small, beautifully wrapped box. Sophie's eyes widened in shock and fury when she saw me. "Mum, what are you doing here?" "I told you," David shot me a look of pure disdain. Before she could finish, I held out the box. "I know," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm not here to stay. I just wanted to give you your wedding gift." She hesitated, then snatched the box from my hand. David urged her to get in the car, but curiosity got the better of her. She tore it open. Inside was an old, worn-out passbook from a savings account. She looked at it, confused. "What is this?" she asked, her voice laced with irritation. I smiled sadly. "That's the college fund I started for you the day you were born. Every extra dollar I ever made went in there. From my cleaning job, from my nurse's aide job. It's all in there. It wasn't much, but I saved it all for you." Sophie stared at the book, flipping through the pages. The entries were small $20 here, $50 there, a testament to years of tireless work. Then she saw the final withdrawal slip. It was dated a few days ago for the entire balance. Tucked behind it was a receipt. A receipt for a pair of designer shoes. The very same shoes she was wearing right then. Sophie froze. She looked down at her expensive shoes, then back at the passbook, then at me. Her perfect, made-up face began to crumble. You paid for these," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded. "I overheard you telling your friend on the phone last month how much you wanted them, but that you couldn't quite afford them. I wanted you to have everything you ever dreamed of for your wedding day, even if I couldn't be there to see it." Tears streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. David grabbed her arm. "Sophie, let's go. Don't let her ruin this." But she shook him off. For the first time in years, she looked at me. She saw not an embarrassment, but her mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. She took a step toward me, then another. "Mum," she sobbed, throwing her arms around me, clutching me like she did when she was a little girl afraid of the dark. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She cried into my shoulder, right there in front of all the departing guests, her expensive dress, and her horrified new husband. In that moment, none of it mattered. Not the money, not the status, not the fancy wedding. It was just us again, a mother and a daughter. I held her tight, my own tears finally falling. I didn't know if we could ever fully mend what had been broken, but as she whispered "I love you" over and over again, I felt a flicker of hope. A wedding may not have brought our family together, but maybe, just maybe, a mother's undying love could. Thank you for watching our story today. If this moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that touches the heart. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Take care and we'll see you in the next video. I tried my best to be happy for her, I really did. After all, isn't it every mother's dream to see her daughter walk down the aisle, radiant and in love? That's what I kept telling myself, even as a small, cold feeling started to grow in my chest. The months leading up to the wedding turned into a slow, painful blur. I'd call Sophie full of excitement, offering to help. "Honey, what about the flowers? I saw the most beautiful roses the other day." Or "How's the menu coming along? Remember how you used to love my lemon tarts? We could have a dessert table." Each time, her response was the same, a polite but firm wall. "Mum, it's fine. I've got it handled." The words were simple, but they stung, pushing me further and further away. It felt like I was standing outside a beautiful, brightly lit house, peering through the window at a party I wasn't invited to. Then, one quiet Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophie. My heart did a funny little flip-flop, a mix of hope and anxiety. The message read, "Mum, I need to talk to you." I felt a shiver run down my spine, a premonition that something was wrong. My finger trembled as I swiped to open the full text. The words on the screen swam before my eyes. "You won't be joining us for the wedding. David's family prefers to keep it small, just close relatives." I read it once, twice, A third time, the sentences didn't make sense. It was like my brain refused to process them. Just close relatives. Wasn't I her mother? Wasn't I the closest relative she had? The phone felt heavy, cold in my hand. My breath hitched, a sob catching in my throat as I frantically dialed her number. Sophie. Sweetheart, I managed to choke out, the tears already streaming down my face. What do you mean I can't come to your wedding? Her voice, when she finally answered, was a stranger's voice. It was cold, distant, and utterly devoid of the warmth I had known for 28 years. Mum, please don't make this harder than it already is, she said, her tone clipped. You'll just make people uncomfortable. David's parents are, well, they're very particular about their guests. The word uncomfortable landed like a punch to the gut. Me, I would make people uncomfortable. But I, who had held her when she cried, who had celebrated her every triumph, who loved her more than life itself, I couldn't form a response. The silence stretched, thick with everything I wanted to scream. Don't take it personally, she added, as if that would soften the blow. You can see the photos after. And then she hung up, click, just like that. 28 years of lullabies, scraped knees, bedtime stories, and unwavering love erased. Erased by a text message and a dial tone. The silence in my apartment was suddenly deafening, amplifying the sound of my own heart breaking into a million pieces. I wasn't just uninvited, I was disposable. The day of the wedding arrived, cloaked in a grey, indifferent sky that perfectly matched my mood. I sat alone in my armchair, the one where I used to read Sophie bedtime stories. The house usually filled with memories, and the scent of my baking felt like an empty tomb. In my hands, I clutched the gift I had so lovingly chosen for her. A delicate pearl necklace that had belonged to my own mother, passed down through generations. I had imagined fastening it around Sophie's neck, a symbol of our family's enduring love. Now the pearls felt cold and heavy, like solidified tears. I closed my eyes and pictured it all. Sophie in her white dress, a vision of beauty and happiness. Walking down an aisle I couldn't see, surrounded by the smiling faces of strangers who had somehow been deemed more worthy of being there than her own mother. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked forward, each second a tiny hammer blow to my heart. Through the open window, I heard the faint, distant sound of church bells. Her church bells. A fresh wave of grief washed over me, and I finally let myself break. I cried until my eyes were raw and my throat was hoarse, until there were simply no tears left to cry. Later that evening, the inevitable happened. My social media feed, once a source of connection, became a gallery of my own personal torture. There she was, Sophie beaming, holding David's hand. Pictures of them cutting the cake, sharing their first dance, laughing with his parents. But in every photo, her smile glowed, illuminating the faces of everyone around her. Everyone except me. I wasn't just absent from the photos. My presence had been completely erased from her narrative, from the most important day of her life. And in that moment, staring at her joyful, unfamiliar face on the screen, something inside me didn't just break. It shattered. It wasn't anger that I felt. It was a profound, hollow realization. I hadn't just been uninvited from a wedding. I had been replaced in her life, and more painfully, in her heart. The days that followed were a silent, grey fog. I moved through my routine like a ghost in my own home. The phone never rang. There were no messages, no explanations, no apologies. Just a suffocating silence from the person who used to be my entire world. The pearl necklace sat in its box on my nightstand, a constant gleaming reminder of what I had lost. Then, about 3 weeks after the wedding, on a morning just like any other, there was a knock on my door. It was so unexpected that for a moment I thought I had imagined it. I wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, I padded to the door and peered through the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. It was David. He was standing there alone. His usually immaculate suit was wrinkled, and his hair was slightly disheveled. He looked nothing like the smug, confident man in the wedding photos. He looked ... lost, uneasy. With a trembling hand, I turned the lock and slowly opened the door. We just stood there for a moment, the silence of the hallway stretching between us, both of us unsure of what would happen next. Thank you so much for watching this story unfold. If you've been moved by this journey, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. Your support means the world and helps us bring more stories like this to you. We'll see you in the next video. Mrs. Carter, he started, his voice thick with unease. Sophie asked me to come pick up some of her things. I just nodded. A heavy silence hanging between us as I led him to her old bedroom. The room felt frozen in time, a museum of the daughter I used to know. As he started packing her belongings into boxes, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced at it, and a curse escaped his lips, low and sharp. He quickly stepped out of the room, mumbling something about taking a call, but he was too slow. My curiosity, a beast I couldn't tame, pulled me closer. The screen was still lit up, a message glowing brightly. It wasn't from Sophie. It was from another woman. The words burned into my memory. Can't wait for our weekend. She still doesn't know, does she? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of shock and anger. He was cheating on her. The perfect son-in-law, the man my daughter had chosen over me, was a liar. When David returned, his face was a mask of strained politeness. He grabbed the last box and hurried out, avoiding my eyes. I didn't say a word. I let him leave, the front door closing with a soft click that sounded like a final judgment. But as I stood there in the quiet hallway, a cold certainty washed over me. This was far from over. The call came 3 months later. The phone rang, and I saw Sophie's name flash on the screen. My hand trembled as I answered, "Mom." Her voice was a fractured whisper. choked with tears. Can I come home? The question hung in the air, heavy with everything she had thrown away. David, he cheated on me, she sobbed. He said I embarrassed him at a gala. He's leaving me. I closed my eyes, a wave of emotions crashing over me. There was a fierce, protective instinct telling me to soothe her, to comfort my child. But beneath that was a deep, throbbing ghost of years of neglect and unspoken hurt. Was this karma? Was it my moment to finally say, I told you so? But hearing her broken sobs, the walls I had built around my heart began to crumble. Of course, Sophie, I said, my own voice softer than I expected. Come home. When she arrived at my doorstep, she was a shadow of the woman from those glossy wedding photos. Her expensive makeup was smeared down her tear-stained cheeks, her perfect hair was a tangled mess, and her eyes were puffy and red. The moment she saw me, she collapsed into my arms, sobbing like the little girl I remembered. I'm so sorry, Mom, she cried into my shoulder. I was so blind. I thought they loved me. I thought their world was what I wanted. I held her tightly, the weight of her finally back in my arms. The years of resentment seemed to melt away in that moment, replaced by a mother's unconditional love. I stroked her hair, whispering the only words that mattered. You're my daughter. You'll always have a home here. The fancy clothes and the high society life were gone, but in their place, something real and precious was beginning to return. The weeks that followed were a quiet journey of healing. Sophie slowly started to put the pieces of herself back together, not just from David's betrayal, but from the guilt of her own actions. We spent long evenings talking, something we hadn't done in years. One night, as we sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky, she turned to me, her voice barely a whisper. Mum, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I looked at my daughter no longer the defiant young woman, but someone humbled by life's harsh lessons. You do, I said gently. But forgiveness doesn't mean we forget what happened. It means we learn from it. Tears welled in her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. I hurt the one person who never ever gave up on me, she said, her voice filled with regret. A small, sad smile touched my lips. Sometimes, I told her, it takes losing everything you think you want to finally see the people who are always there for you. From that day forward, a real change took hold. Sophie started to rebuild her life, but this time she was also rebuilding our bond. She found a job in town, a simple job she enjoyed. She started going to therapy to work through her pain and her past mistakes. And for the first time in a decade, she started visiting me every single week, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to. One day, I noticed the glamorous wedding photos had vanished from her social media pages. They were replaced by a single, new picture. It was a photo of the two of us sitting on my front porch, laughing freely, the sunlight catching the genuine joy in our eyes. The caption she wrote underneath it brought fresh tears to mine. It didn't mention her ex-husband or her old life. It just said, rebuilding with the one who taught me what home really means. And in that moment, I knew we hadn't just healed. We had found our way back to each other, stronger than ever before. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this journey with us. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more stories about life, love, and second chances. We'll see you in the next video. My daughter, my Sophie, once looked at me with eyes full of stars. But life, with its cruel twists, replaced those stars with a cold, hard glare. The day she asked me to leave her wedding, a part of me shattered. I, the woman who had held her hand through scraped knees and first heartbreaks, was suddenly an outcast, a ghost at the feast of her happiness. She stood there, a vision in white, her face a mask of strained politeness, and uttered the words that would haunt my nights for years to come. "Mother, I think it's best if you leave." The room fell silent. The air crackled with unspoken words, with the weight of years of resentment I never knew she carried. I saw the flash of triumph in her new husband's eyes and the pity in the faces of guests who were once my friends. I walked away, my dignity in tatters, leaving behind the one person I had built my entire world around. That night, the silence in my small apartment was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own quiet sobs. I replayed the scene over and over, searching for the moment I had failed her, the wrong turn I had taken that led us to this desolate place. Was it the divorce? The long hours I worked to keep a roof over our heads? The dreams I had for her that maybe weren't her own? The questions were a relentless storm in my mind, and I had no answers, only a profound and hollow ache. The years that followed were a quiet, lonely tundra. Her life, which I once knew every detail of, became a series of filtered pictures on social media. A new car, a lavish vacation, a promotion at a prestigious firm. Her world was shiny, perfect, and completely devoid of me. I sent birthday cards that were never acknowledged, left voicemails that were never returned. Each unanswered call was another small death, another confirmation that the door to her life was not just closed, but bolted shut. I learned to live with the ghost of my daughter. I'd see a young woman on the street with the same fiery red hair and my heart would leap, only to crash back down to earth. I tried to build a new life, joining a book club, taking up gardening, but every bloom in my garden was a flower I wished I could show her. Every chapter in a book was a story I wished I could discuss with her. The world felt muted, a black and white film where the color had been drained out the day she asked me to leave. I saw my friends become grandmothers, their faces alight with joy as they spoke of their grandchildren. I would smile, offer my congratulations, and then retreat into myself, the longing a physical pain in my chest. I had accepted my fate. I was the mother who had been erased. Then, one rainy Tuesday, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, as I often did, but something compelled me to answer. A hesitant voice on the other end said, "Mum." It was her, Sophie. But this wasn't the confident, cutting voice I remembered. This was a voice I hadn't heard since she was a little girl, a voice trembling on the edge of tears. My heart stopped. She told me everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain and regret. The perfect life was a facade. The prestigious job was gone. The lavish vacations had buried them in debt. And the husband, the man who had smirked at my dismissal from her life, had left her for someone else, taking everything with him. She was alone in a cold, empty house with an eviction notice on the door. She wasn't calling to ask for help, she insisted. She was calling to say she was sorry. Sorry for everything. Sorry for the wedding, for the years of silence, for the pride that had cost her so much. And in that moment, all the years of hurt, the anger, the profound loneliness, it all just melted away. She wasn't a stranger, she wasn't an adversary. She was my child, and she was hurting. Without a second thought, I drove the 3 hours to her city. The rain was relentless, mirroring the storm of emotions inside me. When I arrived, the magnificent house I had only seen in pictures looked sad and neglected. And there she was, standing on the porch, a shadow of the woman from the wedding photos. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by worn-out sweats. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. She looked so small, so fragile. She looked like my little girl again. We didn't say much at first. I just opened my arms, and she collapsed into them, sobbing like her heart was breaking. And maybe it was, but as I held her, I realized mine was finally starting to heal. I held her tight, stroking her hair, whispering the same soothing words I had used when she'd had a nightmare as a child. "It's okay. I'm here. It's all going to be okay." In that embrace, the years of silence dissolved. The roles were reversed. I was no longer the outcast. I was the anchor. I was her mother. We packed her life into boxes, a somber inventory of a life that had unraveled. The fancy clothes, the expensive gadgets, the symbols of a happiness that was never real. With each box we sealed, it felt like we were closing a painful chapter. She was quiet, humbled, but I could see a flicker of the old Sophie returning in her eyes. Not the cold, ambitious woman, but the witty, resilient girl I remembered. We didn't talk much about the past, not then. The wounds were too fresh. Instead, we focused on the present. Packing, cleaning, making calls. There was a simple, unspoken comfort in working together, a rhythm we fell back into as if no time had passed at all. She moved back into her old room in my small house. The room was just as she had left it, filled with posters of teenage heartthrobs and dusty trophies. But for the first few weeks, she barely left it, sleeping for hours, the exhaustion of her ordeal weighing heavily on her. I would bring her tea and soup, not pushing, not demanding, just being there. I was simply her mother, providing the quiet, unconditional support she had once so fiercely rejected. Slowly, the light began to return to her eyes. We started talking. At first, it was about small things, the plot of a movie, a recipe for dinner. But then, one evening, sitting in the soft glow of the living room lamp, she finally told me everything. She confessed her insecurities, her desperate need to prove she was better than her humble beginnings, the shame she felt over my simple life. She admitted that her husband had fed that insecurity, isolating her from me, convincing her that I was a symbol of the past she needed to escape. Her words were not an excuse, but a confession, a painful unraveling of the truth. And I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just listened, and I understood. I told her of my own loneliness, of the void she had left in my life. We cried together. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of release, washing away years of misunderstanding. In that moment of shared vulnerability, we found each other again. We weren't just mother and daughter. We were two women who had been broken by life and were now trying to piece themselves back together. Home isn't a place, it's a person who never stops loving you. This became our unspoken truth. Sophie learned a lesson that money and status could never teach her, that a mother's love does undemand perfection, only honesty. And as for me, I stopped waiting for her to become the daughter I once had. I let go of the ghost of the little girl with stars in her eyes. Instead, I embraced the woman she was becoming, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. She got a simple job at a local bookstore, surrounded by stories of trial and triumph. The relief on her face from shedding the weight of her old life was palpable. She rediscovered simple joys, walking in the park, baking with me in the kitchen, the smell of old books. We found a new rhythm, a life that was quiet and unassuming, but filled with a richness we had both been missing. Sometimes, late at night, when I hear her laughter echoing through the small house, a sound I thought I'd never hear again, I whisper a silent thank you to life. Thank you for breaking us just enough to bring us back together. She once kicked me out of her wedding, a public rejection that felt like a final ending. But life has a strange and beautiful way of writing its own invitations. An invitation to healing, an invitation to forgiveness, and an invitation to a love that never truly leaves, even when people do. Now, as we sit on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I see not the past, but the future. A future where we are not defined by our mistakes, but by the grace we extend to one another. The wedding dress is long gone, but what we have now is something far more beautiful and enduring. We have a second chance. We have each other. We are home. Thank you so much for watching our story today. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories about hope and healing. Remember to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, take care.